passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Watson.
Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman, I'm Jarid Watson, and this podcast is a part of Waiting for Next Year. Check them out, original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. On this episode, we're going to get into some things. It's been a while. We're going to get into, goodness gracious, we're going to start with the Browns. We had to figure this out. We were going to do multiple shows. We didn't know how we were going to do it because it's been so long. But we're going to start with the Browns. We're going to talk about Odell and Baker, of course, featured on magazine covers. Duke Johnson and Baker Mayfield seem to be getting along a little bit better, settled their differences. Hopefully that sustains itself, at least until they decide to trade Duke later in the season. Also, we're going to do a quick dive into the Big Ten, college football, talk about the latest with Jim Harbaugh. He made some strange comments. We have opinions about it. You'll hear it all here. And news, his comments that basically stole the show, the Big Ten Media Days, considering we didn't really hear much regarding the Buckeyes. I don't know, Ryan Day and his recruiting prowess. I don't think there's much else.
For Frost having his second big season in Nebraska, for everything that was going on last year with Purdue and that kid, and you got Ohio State and a new coach, guess what? It was all about Jimmy Harbaugh.
Well, yeah, okay, I can't wait. All right, that's going to be fun. I know I've got opinions about that. We'll get to it in a little bit. But first, I wanted to talk real quick about why it is that it's been a couple of weeks since you've heard from us. We've not been neglecting you, I promise. We have not been neglecting our mission to cover Cleveland sports and at least keep up with what's going on. But I had a very sudden and unexpected loss in my family. My stepfather passed away unexpectedly on, it would have been July 6th, early in that afternoon. And he had gone into the hospital the night of the 5th. And we had just spent the 4th together. We happened to be in Ohio because we were taking our kids to their summer camp back in Ohio, down at, shout out to Camp Roosevelt Firebird down near the New Philly area. At any rate, stepfather passed away unexpectedly. Our family is completely destroyed at the moment because of it. Maybe that's a little bit of hyperbole, but my mom is pretty destroyed at this point. My stepdad was a big part of the Struthers, Ohio community. He dedicated much of his life and much of his time and much of his energy towards the Gridiron Club and raising funds for the football team, to the point where he retired from his job after 30 years and then became a bus driver in Struthers to take the kids to and from games. He is a legend in Struthers, Ohio. Once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat. He's going to be loved and missed forever. And it was a very, very, very unexpected, difficult, emotional time for my family, for the city of Struthers, who turned out in droves to his calling hours, which we extended because of just how loved this man was. So, Chucky Beal, we love you, we miss you, and we'll see you again someday soon. In that time, I also want to say a shout out to my cousins Jeff White and his son Gavin. They are avid listeners of the show, even though Andy and I did begin not holding back on cursing. I made sure I checked with them. You cool with that? Not that we're really going to change it. I just wanted to give him a heads up and find out what his thoughts were. At any rate, we're just being ourselves, Andy. We say an F-bomb here and there, and that's just what it is, I guess. But they're still listening. Shout out to them. Of course, that's the first thing I think of when I talk to them about it, but whatever. So there we are. And now, after trying to get this show scheduled and start it back up, we finally, after probably a week of back and forth and conflicting schedules and not having the right equipment, finally have everything back how we need to be. Andy, glad to finally get this show going again.
Glad.
I need it.
And well said. And Chucky, we love you out there. Never met you, but I feel like I know you a lot. And we all wish. And Jarid, you went through so much. And at the same time, I've been traveling to Portland, Oregon. I've been traveling to a bunch of other places for jobs. So it has been a busy summer, to say the least, but we are ready to get back at it, and probably appropriately so we did it this week when the Browns are back in training camp. So this is part one of the show. Part two, you see two of them will be about baseball and NBA and Tribe.
Cleveland Browns.
This has really become the new norm in Cleveland. It seems like, we go through these phases where you hope and you believe, but is it real? You hope and you believe it's real. LeBron kind of brought that every time. It's like, not only it's a lot of hype, but he played well and everything else. This, to me, Jared, reminds me of LeBron preseason. Reminds me of LeBron, the build-up into his NBA career. That's what it feels like for the Browns right now. I just remember the mobs of people who'd want to watch LeBron. You could already tell we're in day 2, and the mobs and the Twitter and and all these people talking about it.
An NFL Network at the practices and constant coverage and sold out. Not that you don't have to pay for them, but training camp, everyone's there. Those tickets are gone, and there's now a waiting list for season tickets.
Yep.
And the team itself is seeing a younger population purchasing those season tickets, which is great for the future of this franchise, who still has a 10-year lease on that stadium. And we're going to have to figure out plans now for what we're going to do in a decade. And I think that this is the start of that as well.
The Browns are officially alive and back. And I know you never want to say a statement like that before a game. You never want to say a statement like that before 3 or 4 games. But Jared, from the spiritual standpoint, the Browns are back. This reminds me of what it was like in the early 90s, in the late 80s. It reminds me of the energy that was there. If I'm being honest and truthful as a Browns fan, when the Browns have come back since 99, Jared, I don't remember attention and buzz like this. This is very unique. I'm not around it. You're not around it. And yet you can feel the energy and the excitement going around this training camp. It's amazing. It's like I said, the only thing I can compare to early 90s, late 80s, obviously mid 80s, you always felt it. But this is the first time since then, and it's so weird in a good way. It's been a goddamn long time, and it's good to see it, because the Browns needed this jolt. And actually, so far, again, it's 2 practices, but you and I alluded to it, so I'm going to start off here. When you see all that positivity and you hear about the OBJ catch or Greedy Williams getting a lot of attention, Denzel Ward, whatever, okay, those are just practice plays. But when you read the headlines the next morning in New York and you see Corey Coleman out with an ACL,
oh my goodness! Not only Corey Coleman, but who else?
Sterling
their
Shepard,
other young wide receiver,
thumb injury, and they're bringing in people like Benjamin. They're bringing in people like Des Bryant to try to help out this team. Guys who are out of shape. And it's like, oh my God, I mentioned this to you, so I was going to say it. The one thing I have seen already, the torch has been passed. The giant, that is what you
hear that glass shaking in the background. That's my Kermit the Frog, me taking a sip. That's none of my business. Reaction right now. Sorry, Mike Francesa. Sorry, New York Giants. Yes, I know what you're about to say, that they've taken the torch. They are the new Cleveland Browns of the league at the moment. And it's odd. It's ironic that it was a trade that solidified that. It was a trade that made that propelled the Cleveland Browns into the spotlight.
Yes.
Even more so than they were. They would have been in the spotlight. We could talk about this too. This season would have been a big season for the Browns, regardless of whether Odell came to this team or not.
Yep.
That was going to happen no matter what. I will say, I feel like this talk of him being a distraction is a forced conversation at times, but I will also say that there are times where it is, with the article, with his conversations, where things are going to pop up, but I don't care. This is what Cleveland fans should expect. No matter what, you're in the spotlight, guess what? You're going to get the negative and you're going to get the good. You're going to get conversations nationally that will piss you off, that you think have no business being said, but I think that you should at least listen to them and question, you know what, maybe some things should be tweaked here and there, but don't get hung up on any of the negativity. That comes with this sort of attention, with this sort of caliber of players in this organization, and with the expectations that they have. That said, Freddie and company are all smiles so far, and I get it. It's only practice. We're talking about practice, Andy. I don't get hyped up on all that either.
We don't. We're both
Greedy Williams coming down, tossing the ball around. It's like, all right, I get it. I don't want to negate from the idea that we shouldn't be hyped about this, because on one hand, I hear people that say they're afraid to even talk about playoffs. Let's just see if they can win 9 games. No, I'm not in that corner either. I don't get tied up with the practice stuff as much as I would have in the past, because we don't have a quarterback battle. we don't want to know what wide receivers are going to do. I know what to expect from a lot of these guys that are on the field. I want to see it. I'm ready for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your
much different feel.
Yeah,
much different
to your
feel than
point,
it's been in years past.
This is going to be the first year I can ever remember. I'm not going to pay attention a lot to. I didn't really either preseason games. Not going to be really in tune to, like, I'll watch them, of course, and I'm going to watch them as a fan. But I'm not going to be, like, belaboring catches and drops and who looked. I'm not into that this year.
I want starters sitting as soon as possible. I don't want it, like, I want this. I want the risk to injury to be as minimal as possible. I know what to expect.
Yeah, that's a big thing. You hit it. The other thing with the Browns, too, that I'm noticing, and we've alluded to it a little bit here, but I want to hammer it home. The national and global attention this team is getting is very remarkable. I mean, this is the team. I mean, there's, again, for everything this year.
Jim Rome said it. It's America's team.
It is, and I'll say it. Watching the Cowboys open a training camp in L.A. got a small blip compared to what's going on in Berea. And that's the
only thing they're talking about is Zeke not showing up.
Yeah, the Cowboys are interesting. We should get to them at the end of the NFL segment. There's a couple teams already. There's a couple teams already that I'm curious to see how it goes this season. And there's two in the NFC East. The Cowboys and the Giants to me are interesting in negative ways. So there's a global presence right now in Cleveland. You kind of tipped it off. OBJ is definitely a different animal, even for you and I's era, Jared. I mean, we had Kosar, we had different athletes come in, but this is a global athlete. I mean, he is such a popular figure. And to see him in there, I know you're covering your face laughing, but he is really...
Because it's on a strange way, it's even different from LeBron.
I think LeBron and OBJ are the same. I think they're very similar.
I think there's slight differences, but I haven't been able to put my finger on it yet. And part of that, I think, has to do with the fact that Odell is a single dude, no kids, and his adventures are a little different. The places that he's putting himself is a little different. That's where I'm saying. Now, if we're talking about the level of attention,
I'd even say LeBron's still
the same. All day.
Yeah.
The type of attention is where
LeBron's still got a notch
nuance
above him, but it's not
be
big anymore. It's close, but LeBron's still I would say LeBron's right there, but but a touch ahead.
Yeah.
So for everything that we talked about going in the last couple of weeks, really the only thing that's been coming up is Duke Johnson. So Duke Johnson did come into play in the very first day. Everybody's read it now. Mayfield kind of went out and said, "We're good. It's not awkward. It's self-inflicted. I hope he does his job. We got to have guys focused and goal-oriented who have a single focus and mindset." End quote. So really, Jared, right off the bat, I think that got put out there. I know you and I have both been digging into stories and trying to find stuff. Not really a lot out there. I think the other thing that we should butt these two stories together. Go for it.
Strange enough, when we talk about we haven't heard much, we heard Duke's comments, we heard Baker's comments. Ever since Duke did his strange little single-sided press conference on his own out on the field, we haven't heard from him.
Well, that goes to the story part too. He's got a new agent, it's Drew Rosenhaus.
And exactly. And Drew's got, and we've talked about this. They're not looking. Drew's telling them right now, look, you want to get out of here? You play your ass off.
Well,
until Kareem Hunt comes back, right? I mean, that's got to be part of that conversation.
But also,
you shut your mouth, you play your ass off.
Also, Duke, you have a wonderful opportunity. And in fairness and love and war, there's no leverage you have here.
And at the end of it, if he plays his ass off, he knows how much that the fans love him. He might not want to leave.
That's the whole point. You have, he signed for another.
The winning might make him want to stay.
Right, and that kind of goes into story 3. The other big story that came out before Thursday was the team being Dorsey, team being Kitchens, met with Kareem Hunt. Sat down with them. It has been confirmed now. Something definitely happened in some nightclub back in June. No arrests were made. Here's some of the quotes that came out of that. This is via Tony Grossi's article. And of course, as soon as I click it up, it goes up and down. Here we go, right here. "We have reviewed the facts," Dorsey said. "We understand what the facts are. Freddie and I both had the chance to sit down with him. He understands there's no guarantees. He's working his fanning on and off the field as well." So I think the big thing here that you take out of this, along with butting with Duke Johnson, you and I have alluded to him more than others, Kareem really still has a long ways to go in certain aspects. He's doing great in other aspects, and we're all rooting for him. But this is why Duke is so key, especially in a position with running back that injuries happen. So Duke is going to have a big role in this team. He's coming back. If he comes back,
I need to mention this regarding Kareem, and I only know this because I've kind of been a part of it when I was younger. Before I left for the Air Force, way back in the day, we would hang out with Kelly Pavlik every once in a while. Everyone knows Kelly the Ghost, Youngstown's championship middleweight champion boxer, right? Him and Boom Boom, legends. When we'd be out and Kelly would be around, there would be people that knew him and would automatically flock to him after they got a few beers in them and want to pick fights. They would want to start trouble.
There's always guys like that.
You know what I mean?
There's always guys like that in every crowd.
Just because of who he was, you're right. And when you go in those atmospheres and you drink the beer and the testosterone levels go up, and you got people that think they want to knock that chip off your shoulder, even though they got no chance in hell of ever doing it, they get their liquid courage, they make their comments, they pick their fights, and if you're thin-skinned, which is fair to say that there were times where Kelly was thin-skinned, and I'm guessing Kareem is too, where these things are going to happen, and the only way to avoid it, and I hate to say it because you don't want to limit how somebody enjoys their off time, but the clubs are going to get you in trouble. Bottom line.
Well, yeah, and I think also I'll take a step further because we've all been in those circles at times. Kareem, the club is not seen to be hold right now, and actually, in the long term, you might be able to build back to that, but you're doing it too soon. It's almost like when you're rehabbing from an injury and you want to run. Kareem, right now, what would be the best thing for you to do is to lay low. Do the right things. It's boring, and yes, it's not as interesting, but do those kind of things and rebuild your life that way. And over time, you might be able to go back to the club. You might be able to do other things like that. Because Jared, you're right. Because the other thing that I've noticed over the years too, athletes get sought after by people, and they go right after them like a light. They want to go after, and I agree with you. I saw it with Katzenmoyer a lot when I was growing up in Columbus.
Yeah.
I saw it with other athletes too. Like, you got to be so careful about those moments, but. You know, going back to Duke, I was really interested to see what was going to happen to him more than anybody in the first 2 days of camp. And Jared, I mean, unless I'm missing something, Duke so far so good. And I think that is a good sign for him, obviously, in the team, because I think this is a story that could ramp up fast if there's trouble or there's negativity, but so far so good. And I was glad to see that. The other big news story that kind of came and went with a cup of coffee was Mike Daniels, defensive tackle, who was released by the Packers, who was a Dorsey selection along with Highsmith, along with Elliott Wolf. He went to the Browns on Thursday morning, a cup of coffee greeting, and he went to the Lions on Friday and signed with the Lions. I'm not disappointed by this. I actually did not get excited about this as much as any other Browns fans, because Daniels is a run stopper. And, you know, it's just something that the Browns really don't need.
One of the top 10 in the league in the past, however many years. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just don't see him as a need. Like, we got Sheldon Richardson, Ogunjobi. Like, do you really want another guy in there to plug the gap? It'd be great, yes, but I see the Browns needing to spread their money in other places still.
Yeah, because I know we talk about needing the depth. We do need, I mean, it would have helped just for breathers,
of course,
but
in football, right?
But that edge is going to open up things for the middle as it is.
Yeah.
You know, when you improve on the edge that you're going to change offensive line schemes for those teams. Who are they going to double?
Yeah.
Where are they going to put that? And is that going to open up the middle? Like, these are things that are going to change no matter what.
And people need to remember this. Sheldon Richardson's a good player. Okay, so to sign something like that, you're kind of negativing a little bit of what you just did with Sheldon Richardson, and everybody likes Larry. So why put another guy in there? Again, Daniels has to play a lot. He's a Pro Bowler, so you can't just rotate him off the bench here. So I thought that didn't make as much sense. He went to the Lions, which, by the way, he's not in the AFC, so that's fine. Stay in the NFC Central, do your thing, or in the NFC North, I should say, and do your thing and whatever. The other news story, before we get into the magazine covers that came out before Thursday, Whereas Randall is talking to the Browns staff and trying to get a longer-term deal. Grossi again with this story. The Browns have had talks with Randall's agent about a new contract. They're trying to get something done. Quote, I've had good conversations with Damaris's agent. This thing's going to take a little bit of time, Dorsey said on Thursday morning. So they're trying to reset the calibrations with him. I think that's good. We all liked Damaris Randall last year. Mm-hmm. So Jared, like, I think
he's one of those guys that personality-wise is great to have in the locker room. Fun guy. Even Baker was like, I can't stand him, right off the bat. And then they love each other, right? Wasn't that part of the conversation? He annoyed the hell out of him. So, I mean, that's I can already tell that's a guy that just brings life to the locker room. He's probably a guy that helps, bond other guys together. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Mary.
Quiet leader. Flat out. Quiet leader to us, but more of a leader to when people think. And he does a lot that we don't really probably see on the field because we have all these other star talents.
It's not even quiet leadership; it's unrecognized leadership.
There you go. That's the proper term.
You don't even realize he's being a leader just by his behaviors, right?
So that's the term I was looking for. And that's the right phrase, and that's what I was going for. So yes, you take all that stuff and you wrap it in what Jared Watson just said. Now let's go back to Beckham. The buzz leading up was all about the Giants and how much the New York and everybody's frustrated with OBJ. There's been articles daily about this. We've mentioned what's going on in the Giants camp.
You got to do stuff to make yourself feel better about your situation.
Exactly.
Of course, go for it. Yeah, that's great.
Of course. And then you got the big thing that came out with OBJ and GQ. And for people who have not read it, I would suggest you read it. I thought it was actually a very good insider. I thought he was pretty raw in that article, Jared, in GQ. I thought OBJ really opened up. The bigger quote that everybody took nationally was the disrespected quote that he was the man on the team. There are the other quotes in here that I would read into real fast. The big thing about OBJ that you could tell from all this that I guess, I won't read all the quotes. Read the article. I think you should. The big thing I took out of this from a Browns perspective, he was very frustrated in New York. And not only was he frustrated in New York, he was to the point of where he wasn't enjoying the game. There was hints that he was talking about retirement or thinking retirement. You could tell by some of these comments he did not have a relationship with Gettleman. He did not have a relationship with Shermer, and he was at his wit's end. So he is not only a guy who's coming into the Browns and is a talented player, but it's obvious, but it needs to be stated again. He's looking to have a big year because he wants to prove people how he can play and how he can win games on the field. Yeah. And that's what really came out of this article to me. Now, the bigger headlines was about the Giants in the city of New York. And I get that. And the Giants are down right now, and they've not had a good start to training camp, which is never a thing. You don't have great starts to training camp and equates to wins. But as we all know as Browns fans, with LaCharles Bentley is my favorite example, day one, never saw him again. You can have bad days in training camp, and it can set the tone for the season. The Giants have already had that as we're tipped off. So, everybody's going to talk about the Giants thing with Odell Beckham, and that I get it. It is a big story. And Eli commented today that he's won games before him, and I get that he's right. But the thing is, Jared, with this Odell Beckham thing in GQ, the thing that I like about it is he is totally taking on this season for three things. He wants to prove people how good he really is. Mm-hmm. He actually wants to prove the Giants wrong. And you can tell he looks at Cleveland as an opportunity to grow himself as a person. Those are great
Freddie
things.
Talks about this on a regular basis. He wants these guys to be themselves. He wants them to have their personalities. He wants them to make good choices and to make right choices, but he does not want to strip them of their identities and their personalities. Now, here's where I will say this. When you're in a town like New York City, where power is such a commodity, and holding on to that power is something that is vital to a lot of the lives of those people that believe in that construct of that city, that is the most important thing in the world, that people like Odell Beckham Jr., who speak truth to power, in a sense, who want to assert their own individuality, who want to make their claim to a piece of that power pie, aren't respected by the people that you are pulling some of that power from. I think that in a city like Cleveland, we're not worried about any of that. I don't think Freddie Kitchens cares one way or another. I don't think John Dorsey, he couldn't care less if Odell wants to be the person that he is. They're not going to try to hammer that nail into that block of wood evenly with everyone else. They're not going to try to put him in his place like a city, that New York does to people in those situations. I just feel like this is a more relaxed lifestyle for him in Cleveland. I feel like the demands in New York are always going to be that way. And if you don't want to plug yourself into the way that the systems work within those organizations, especially with the Yankees, which we'll probably talk about later on in the other episode, that you don't have a place there. And it can be very frustrating and it can be very isolating. And you will quickly turn an entire fan base against someone if you don't follow that path. Cleveland's the best place for him, flat out. He didn't know it, and now he does.
It was the best fit for him. This team is ready for him. 2 years ago, Odell Beckham Jr. had been a terrible fit with the Browns. 5 years ago, Odell Beckham Jr. had been a terrible fit with the Browns.
Yes.
This team is ready for him, and they're ready to win. And that's what that move signified from us from day one. Again, read the GQ article. That was really well done. I thought it really gave a good, raw look at what's going on. And then for Baker's article, I thought for the non-Brown fan, I think you'll really enjoy it. It gives you a good insider look. I didn't really get as much out of that one, Jared, as I did the other from Beckham Jr. I thought Beckham Jr. I thought a lot more about him. And
it's
Baker's
a fun piece from someone who is fun at telling stories. I mean, right? I mean,
exactly. I thought the other thing with Baker that was a very good story too, but we already kind of knew that stuff. We kind of knew who he was. The Hugh Jackson thing kind of came and went. And then we should mention about Hugh Jackson, who cannot let that story down in any way possible. Hugh Jackson, at some point, I am surprised he said those comments again, where he basically came out and said,
"Yeah, who did he go on when he went on with what's his face from 92.3, who's down in Carolina now." Oh goodness, it was whatever, the something experiment. Oh my gosh, why is my brain stopping? But at any rate, I'll figure it out in a minute.
Yeah, well, he came out, and I'm bringing up a story now. It's for Baker Mayfield to clear the air, according to Hugh Jackson, is the story headline. The basic thing is, I think it would be for him to clear the air. Basically, Jackson's putting it on Mayfield. Hey, I really do think, and I'm glad there's not been a lot of back and forth, Mayfield should move on from this. And he should put it in the past. And then so far he has. Hugh Jackson needs Hugh Jackson needs to do the same. You should never back for year 3. We all know that. And he kind of got a gift for that, and he still messed it up. So I think that whole thing is he's making that more about Baker. And what Hugh doesn't realize, that the reason why Hugh got fired is because Hugh Jackson wasn't a good head coach. And this article points out to that again, that problem. Hugh thinks Baker got him fired. No, Hugh, you got yourself fired. You lost 31 games in 2 years, even before Baker stepped on the field. And that is something that really that I just drives me crazy about Hugh. The other thing I want to tie in here, if I were OBJ, though, and I like OBJ a lot, and I'm a big fan of his already, I would not bring up any more Giant stuff this year. I think that article, and you leave it in a good note. And Jerry, I think it's time for him to move forward. No more commenting on the Giants. Focus on the play on the field.
Well, let me just say I was wrong on my statement. It was he said that was Zach Gelb, CBS Radio. So I was incorrect.
Yes,
I believe
Zach Gelb.
I'd have to
Tuesday night appearance of Zach Gelb. But
anyway,
so the basic thing so far from Browns: no injuries. Knock on wood to major players. And there's always nicks and dings, but so far so good. Kareem Hunt does have a growing pool, but again, he doesn't play till week 9 anyway, so I don't know how much that really put value on. But so far, Jared, it's everything we thought it would be. A big splash, a lot of rumblings, a lot of energy coming out of Rio.
Yep, I'm again lost for words. Clearly, I'll do that for the next 30 minutes because that's where I'm at. I'm ready for the season, Andy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I'm ready for the season. I'm ready to get that first game kickoff. Ready to the point where I legitimately had a dream last week about the kickoff being a fumble recovery and Browns in the red zone with Baker at the helm to start the season. Strange dream. Would be lovely if it came true. Wouldn't that be fun? I think this is going to be something different, man, something special, something that we are going to it's just like when we've said it when LeBron came back. Don't take any of this time.
No, it's special.
Don't take it for granted. This is a once in a generation type of possibility here with this team.
Like I said, I did not feel
to create something big and sustainable. Yes. And I think that would be my biggest bummer, Andy, is that if this was a flash in a pan, that if it was 1, 2, 3 seasons and done, and then we were back to the,
I don't want to say it, but
the basement, that would be the heartbreaking part. I want this to be something that we build off of and continue, just like the Patriots have done over
the only thing that I will stress throughout this broadcast leading up into these games, the big thing is the Browns need to win games on Sunday, obviously. They need to focus on what's ahead and making the right plays. But to me, the big thing in the background that should be more in the foreground to me is beat Pitt. You got to beat the Steelers this year. You got to overtake that team. That's going to be a big thing for this team. It's a theme I'm going to hit all year. So I think it's going to be harder than people think. I think the Steelers are going to be ramped up and ready to play for the Browns this year, as they should be.
I think they're in denial.
No, they can be, but the Browns need to prove it too. There's a two-edged sword here. I agree with you. I agree with everybody else. I think the Browns are legit. But I could understand a Steeler perspective saying, prove it. Prove it.
Right, and I know, and we talk about it all the time. I don't know what it is. I am not someone who will push all my chips in. I'm not budging though, Andy. I genuinely am not nervous about any of this.
No,
and I'm usually nervous. I'm usually the type of fan that gets antsy and nervous about, I hope they can do it. Think about how many, especially if you think about it, how many close games the Browns have lost over the past 19.
Oh, my God.
Right?
I would even say,
if that was a thing that we could look at where the Browns either blew it or lost in the last couple minutes, or
non-competitive,
whether it was some fluke or whether it was something crazy where every time you thought we were going to turn a corner somewhere, something happened. And I just don't think that that's even remotely a possibility.
No, I think everything's in the cards. The other thing quickly about the NFL, I mentioned the Cowboys. The Cowboys have had an interesting start. Yeah. They're out in Los Angeles this year. I guess they thought they need to recruit more fans, so they went to LA, which LA is a heavy.
Yeah, which LA's already got their own.
Well, basically, here are the teams in LA for people who don't know, don't pass through there. The two teams are the Raiders and the Cowboys. There's a lot of Raiders and there's a lot of Cowboys fans in LA. So that's 1 and 2. Right. I would say 3's the Rams. And then the Chargers, I think there's more Browns fans in LA than Charger fans in LA, to be honest with you. So they moved, packed up there, but you alluded to it. The Zeke Elliott thing's interesting. And the other big story to me that I'm not picking on them. The Giants to have that kind of start in day one is a Browns type of story reread for ages, for the last 10 or 15 years. Oh, first day.
Yeah, makes you almost want to talk about Trevor Bauer instead of the Giants.
Oh,
right?
by the way, Princess had some opinions.
If you're a New York personality.
Did you hear him talk about Bauer?
Yeah. I hadn't listened to it. I just looked at the quote and I saw Bauer's response to it.
We'll get to it in the end section.
I followed the Twitter stuff. We'll get into that in the next. But you get my point. Like, you don't want to talk about the Giants right now. He'd rather talk about and now all of a sudden he's turning into it's becoming a Cleveland thing, kind of like what's his face out with the Warriors.
Oh gosh. Well, more to come on preseason and training camp with the Browns as we go along. But look, you never want to say good start to when nothing's happening on the field, even in preseason. But honestly, if we're being fair and loving war, the energy level has been a great start. Now let's kick off to college football. Media days happened last week. SEC always kicks it off. Then you got the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, all these different schools. Amazingly, usually the SEC kind of steals the spotlight. It didn't really feel that way this year. Actually, I thought the most press came from the Big 10 in Chicago. I thought Chicago got a lot of the buzz, and it wasn't because of a particular moment or moments. It was because of one coach. Jim Harbaugh has a lot of, for people who don't remember, Jared's a Buckeye guy. I'm a big Notre Dame fan and love Purdue Boilermakers too. Won't get into that story today. But we've all been fascinated, and I hit this hard last year about Harbaugh. I think last year for Harbaugh was a big year. by far, the overwhelming favorite so far coming in to the Big Ten, for whatever reason or another, has been earmarked as the Wolverines. The Wolverines have been seen as a team to beat in the Big Ten. Now, for people who listened to me last year, I don't want to hear about the goddamn Wolverines until you fucking beat the Buckeyes. And I am not a Buckeye fan. I don't want to hear this fucking shit about how you're the favorite until you beat the Buckeyes. Okay? Because you last year got smoked in the horseshoe. So to hear Jim Harbaugh puffing out his chest saying Urban Meyer always leaves the program in a stink, goes on about mental health, which I'll go on to in a second, which is a terrible comment from Jim.
Which, by the way, Feinbaum backed him up on that.
And I like Paul Feinbaum a lot, but I don't agree with Paul. Paul and I are friends, I would even say. And
I've always respected
I like Feinbaum a lot.
I don't think
but
I
do
agree with him
not agree with him on mental health. And I'll get into that in a second.
Nope.
But the big thing I took out of all these media days, the Buckeyes came and went. The Irish don't have one. Boilermakers, they're not ever going to make any noise anyways. I didn't hear much from Alabama. I didn't hear much from Georgia. I didn't hear much from Clemson. But by far, Jared, Michigan ruled that week. You heard a lot about Michigan. And again, I go back to, you better beat the Buckeyes or none of this matters. So I think there's a huge amount of pressure on Michigan again this year. And I don't even know they're as good. And I thought that loss in the year in Columbus was damning. The other thing that, obviously the Urban Meyer stuff, he said, look, that's for people who don't remember, Bowden and especially Spurrier. Spurrier went after Bowden. Spurrier went after Philip Fulmer. Spurrier went after Ray Goff when he was coaching Georgia. Spurrier went after anybody. So these kind of tongue-in-cheek rivalry coaches has been going on for years. So to me, it wasn't really headlines that Harbaugh digged in Urban Meyer. That to me is fair game and love more college football.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, let's all be real about this. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows I'm not the biggest supporter of Urban Meyer. I actually don't like the you're not going to like this, the very Putin way that he's kind of still got his talons.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Into that football, into that system where, is Ryan Day really the head coach? From a distance, it's kind of like those years that Putin wasn't leading Russia, that he still was. He was the guy. Don't look behind the curtain, right? That's what we're looking at right now. I'm not saying the same thing. It's the same thing. I'm just saying there's this strange, you just know that he still is pulling a lot of the strings in regard to that stuff. And you also know that that Harbaugh, in regard to the comments when it comes to Urban Meyer, it sounded like 50% sour grapes, 50%, you know what? I'm with you, because Urban does have trouble following him everywhere he goes. And
again, it's all in love and fair and love and war in college football coaches. They dig at each other all year. You don't see it in college basketball. You really don't see it in any other sport, but in college football, it is a stamp of approval. It's almost like you have to. And in fact, Spurrier went after Dabo Swinney until Swinney started beating him. So, I mean, there's a whole history here, so I don't read into that. The mental health comments, though, I really disagree with. In the big comment that he had, it was told in an ESPNU podcast or interview, whatever you want to call it. Down the road, I don't see that helping them at all if it's a legitimate thing, talking about mental health, possibly affecting waiver players to get transferred for waivers. But nobody would know. But what are you going to say? 10 years down the road, I just had to say what I had to say. You're putting them in a position that's unfair, not right. You're just saying that's something we should not be promoting in college football.
You're assuming that people are going to be lying about their mental health.
Hey, if that's the case, that's very rare. Very rare. It takes actually a lot for a person to admit, I'm feeling depressed, or I have ADHD, or I'm actually feeling some things, or maybe I have more.
He doesn't realize the chilling effect that happens from those comments, where people don't want to even bring it up.
It's wrong that Jim Harbaugh said that. And once more, if kids have something going on and it would help them to move or to transfer somewhere else to help them as a person, that's what college is about.
Well, and let me say this too, to any of you dudes out there who want to sit here and listen to this show and get angry because we're defending the this side of taking care of your mental health. Let me remind you that the reason that men die and have a shorter life expectancy than women isn't because of anything beyond the fact that we ignore our mental health issues.
Yes.
And if you don't agree with me on that, then you're just turning a blind eye.
I've done,
because it's been shown, it's been scientifically shown. The research suggests guys don't talk about things. Guys shut down. Guys keep things bottled up. And when you do that, what happens? You get pathology in the sense of you're going to get anger outbursts. You're going to get nights out drinking. You're going to get sexual promiscuity. You're going to get different ways, unhealthy ways of coping with depression, anxiety. And I can tell you what, as somebody, and I'll go ahead and say it on this show, as somebody who's gone through a lot of these things, especially after serving in the military for 12 years in some really not fun places, let me tell you, there is no argument here. None. I'm not going to have it. This is truth, whether you like it or not. You want to throw around the word snowflake. You want to make fun of these kids. You want to make millennial jokes. That's you being a stubborn ass. And I just don't have time for it. I don't have time for it.
people put mental health down because it's something that's not visual. It's another thing that really bothers me. You can't see depression. You can't see ADHD. It's something you can't, it doesn't come down on your analytical chart. And what Harbaugh did, I agree with you 100%. What Harbaugh did was wrong. And for people who still believe in this, Jared, everything Jared said is absolutely correct. It takes a lot of balls to say to someone, I think I might have some issues I need to talk out. And hey, I know I came to Michigan, but it actually helped me a lot because I'm from Ohio to go back to Ohio and get my life in gear. There's nothing wrong with that. That is the difference between pro and college. And in college, you're still learning.
And it's the difference between the word, it comes back to pride a lot of times too.
Yes.
And pride in the words, I say it all the time. It's one of my favorites. I know you're not a big fan, whatever, Pulp Fiction. That's pride fucking with you. That's pride fucking with you.
I just thought, even before Big Ten Media Days, I like the whole thing that Jim Harbaugh presents in a way because he's an antagonist, because he's trying to bring back the Schembechler mentality. I got to be honest with you, it's going to be very hard for me to cheer for Michigan from here on out. I'm really, really down on that program, and I'm really, really down on what he did last week. It's getting hard for me, Jared, to root for Michigan, and I never did anyways, but I just don't want Michigan to win after comments like this, and after he doesn't give rosters before games from the media people because he's being secretive.
Well, it's not.
It's enough
you
of this
know
crap.
it's
enough.
It's not working anyways. How corny was that last year? There was so much chicken counting with this whole revenge tour bullshit.
Yeah.
Counting chickens, man. Counting chickens. You were nowhere near being in a position where you can do that. If you wanted to make that bulletin board stuff, sure. But you want to wear T-shirts and you want to act like, let's reel that in a little bit. Harbaugh's a weird dude. His brother defended him on this.
And that was wrong, too.
Feinbaum defended him. I will not. I will not, and Andy will not, and you will not hear us defending anything that will downplay the importance of taking care of yourself.
Yes, it's very, very big.
Be selfish. No one is going to care about you but you.
That's right. And by the way, I've had to do some things recently. I know Jared's done some things too. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. So to hear those comments just, to me, does not have the sensitivity to what's going on. And that's what...
Well, sometimes, too, it's folks that are working in situations where they're ignoring their own mental health, so they feel like you should be, too. If I could ignore my shitty situation, you should ignore your shitty situation. Get the fuck out
I'm
of here.
agreed. So to wrap up, we will do...
Not so fast.
Exactly. We will do more on college football. I'm starting to read up on it now. We'll do a big college football preview in the middle of August. That was my perspective for the Browns and also Media Day weeks. I think here's how I want to end this football, special back as we're coming back for Andy and Jared. The big thing that I think I took out of all this, though, for the college football perspective, we talk about the Browns' pressure. It is almost as equal to me with Michigan. And I'm fascinated to see how they handle it because they are really being hoisted because Urban Meyer has exited stage left, that they're going to be the team to beat and they are going to rock the Big Ten. I don't think so either, but I'm interested to see. But everybody's high on the Wolverines. High on the Wolverines.
I haven't gotten enough good reason to believe that Ohio State will not win the Big Ten next year. Sorry. Now, that granted, I can't say that I know enough about Wisconsin's, setup.
Nebraska's
Penn
up.
State.
There's
there's stuff that I'm not up to par on, with knowing where these teams are coming from. But again, like you said, I'll believe it when I see it. And until then, adjust your mental health perspective. All right, that's where I'm going to leave it.
I just found it interesting. For everything that I saw last year in that game in Columbus, and I know Urban Meyer left, and I'm not a Buckeyes overwhelming favorite. Interesting. Find that interesting. I'll have to see how it goes. The other things and everything else, pretty good to wrap up after this. And Jarid. And I think that's something we should all do as Browns fans, because we've many of those opening day players holding out. Or in the case of the Giants, they lose their. And by the way, Corey Coleman's not even good. By the way, Corey Coleman's out for the ACL.
I'm kind of disappointed because how are we going to be able to rub Giants fans' noses in the fact that we told you so if he doesn't get to play?
Well, we told you so anyways, because he got hurt again. By the way, he's been hurt a lot in his career. I feel bad for the guy, but God, he's hurt.
I know. Right.
But he's already hurt. He's already hurt.
In realness, we don't want these things to happen, but I didn't want it to happen anyways. Like I said, I guess I don't have to apologize.
No, but
I didn't want it to happen. I wanted him to go out there and
motorcycle accidents with Kellen Winslow. These things.
I don't even want to go down all that.
Not a good guy.
Ooh.
Not a good guy. Quickly, I'm going to flip-flop. Says trying to get this website up. ESPN.com today is moving slow.
Oh, yeah. Which, if you've listened to prior episodes, I've already made my complaints about ESPN's web design.
I do like ESPN's website, though. I know Jared hates it, but I do like it the best. We'll get into a website poll later. But website poll about websites. The big game to me I want to read a lot about is Nebraska.
Yo, dog, I heard you like websites.
Oh, God.
All right, go ahead.
Nebraska's the other team in this conference for the Big Ten I really want to read a lot about, because Frost did have the team playing better towards the end of the year. They had a lot of goofy losses early on. Ohio State goes to Nebraska on week 5. That's going to be a tough game. That's going to be a tough game for Ohio State.
Yeah, tough game for Ohio State. Yeah, I don't know. I've been low on Nebraska ever since they let go.
By the way,
I'm glad he's back.
But by the way, you're saying everything that we've been alluding to. Nebraska needs to prove it too. But Nebraska be the one team I'm hearing a lot about. That
Nebraska, Northwestern.
Northwestern is what they are. By the way, they play in Evanston on a Friday night this year. Ohio State does. By the way, Ohio State's lucky they got a bye week. No Purdue this year, so thank God they don't have to go through that embarrassment.
Oh, dumb. I didn't. Okay.
So they got that going for us.
What I forgot to look at is we don't have Maryland in Maryland.
At home. At home. So here's a quick Buckeye schedule. Florida Atlantic. No big non-conference game this year. Florida Atlantic, Cincy, both at home. At Indiana, which seems to be now a traditional first road game for Ohio State. Miami, Ohio. So, those are all winnable games. At Indiana will be tough, but they should win that game. At Nebraska, that's a challenge. Michigan State at home. Then they have a week off. Then they play at Evanston, and then they got a lot of home games. Whiskey and Maryland at home. Throw in a trip to Piscataway, and then Penn State. Honestly, after Northwestern, Wisconsin's always good, but they have a lot of home games. Throw in Penn State, then you get Michigan at home. The big thing that I noticed out of that schedule is there's no non-conference opponent that really hits Ohio State in the mouth. Unless you're really scared of the Fickles. Yeah.
No, I think that this is a good year for Ryan Day to start. This is a good year for this Ohio State team to see what's next.
Yep.
Might surprise a lot of people. Ryan Day handled that team well in those games that Urban Meyer wasn't there. Ryan Day was a plug-and-play head coach. The Urban's hanging around probably because the boosters, partly because he doesn't want to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, partly because damn well boosters, people are going to have their eyes on him. And Urban's going to give him the support to hopefully prove himself. So there's good to that too, as much as I knock the weirdness of.
He'll be doing
Urban
Fox
still being
games too,
around.
unless has changed. He's doing Fox commentating as well.
Not something I
now, my Irish
but
have a much tougher schedule than the Buckeyes do, but that's not surprising. Notre Dame plays anybody they'll take on all comers. So they play at Oh boy, we fall.
But
Notre
they
Dame just doesn't fall flat in their face with Kelly.
Anyways,
we get blown out in the losses. Miami, Clemson last year. Oof. I mean, we don't lose; we get torched. Notre Dame does have a tough schedule. They play at Louisville, New Mexico. Those are 2 wins. But then you go at Georgia. That's a tough game. UVA's better. Bowling Green. That's a cupcake. Yeah. USC, always a tricky game. Rivalry at Michigan. And then you got that game at the end of the year, which used to be such a winnable game at Stanford. I don't even remember the last time they won at Stanford. Notre Dame's actually loaded, but sadly, when you play at Georgia, at Michigan, and at Stanford 3 different months, Jared, I think they go 9-3. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think they win any of those road games.
Well, I mean.
At Georgia? No way. At Michigan? How much I would love to see them beat Harbaugh? Nope. At Stanford, they never win that game.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right, and that just is what it is, Andy. I mean, they took the schedule. It is what it is. Then again, you might be surprised. You might be surprised. Who knows?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, that's it for the football wrap-up. Great start for the Browns. We talked about the Buckeyes a little bit. Jim Harbaugh stole the show. I think the big thing, though, to hit upon again, is good to see the Duke situation kind of settle down for now. It's nice to see that.
Yep.
OBJ got out of this comments through GQ. Very good article for people to read. Mm-hmm. Again, if I were Beckham, I would not go back to the well on that for a while. I would leave your play in the field now. And I think the other thing to kind of watch as the season goes on for the Browns, they're the global team. This is all positive. There always will be hurdles in the road. How will that come about? We'll see. So far, 2 days, and by the way, which it should be, 2 days so far so good, which is great. And the excitement level is fantastic in Berea. Fantastic.
Browns finish the season 12-4. Browns go on and kick some ass in the playoffs. I'll leave it at that. Andy and Jarid at gmail.com. Andy and Jarid at gmail.com. Don't forget, Jarid is spelled Jarid. Andy is spelled the normal way.
Andy.
Andy and Jarid at gmail.com. Also, follow us on the, check out the website, clevelandandbeyond.net, andyandjared.com. Both of them take you to the same website. Both of them will take you to the podcast. That's andyandjared.com, clevelandandbeyond.net. Oh, it's been a while, Andy. On Facebook, facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond. On Twitter, at CLE and Beyond. Don't forget, subscribe on iTunes. You can also listen on Google Play, Stitcher. Ask your Alexa device. It'll all work for you. We are a part of waiting for next year. I'm not waiting for next year this year. I'm waiting for a Super Bowl. That's what I'm waiting for. Waitingfornextyear.com, original Cleveland sports content. Fabulous writers. They've been doing this for a long time. We are so proud to be a part of Waiting for Next Year. And to the point where Andy's already done a show with the Waiting for Next Year folks. And I'm next on the list, and we're going to continue this collaboration. We're going to rock it till the wheels fall off. And I'm proud to be a part of Waiting for Next Year, as is Andy. There you go. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jarid Watson. This is our first episode back. We're going to record another one right now. You can listen to it whenever the hell you want to. Talking Tribe. So that'll be the next one. Cool deal. Andy, any last words?
I'm fascinated to see, for everything I love about the Browns, I'm a huge college football fan, as Jared knows. I am fascinated to see how this all plays out in Michigan this year. I am fascinated by it, because I did not think that was coming.
I am not fascinated at all, because it's going to be the same shit, different day. At least we're not Detroit. Still not Detroit. All right. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jarid Watson. Thanks, Mike Polk. We love you. Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond. Talk again soon. Take care.